Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Q&A. Now that the Legion info has settled down a little bit, it's time to get back to answering your questions. If you want to ask me something, then hit up my Twitter, AskFM, and of course the YouTube comments. They're all great places to go. Anyway, let's dive right into the questions, and the first one is from Devon on Twitter, who says, as an Alliance player, are you excited for the Night Elf themed armor and weapons that could be throughout the expansion? And the answer is very. I was really happy to see that Legion was going to have a mix of different aesthetics. Currently it looks like we're going to have a few Night Elfish looks, along with the Legion and almost a Northrendish streak with some stuff going on there. So there's a lot of potential variety, which is great, and the same goes for the armor and the weapon styles. We haven't really had a lot of Night Elf themed endgame raid gear recently, so that would be really nice to offset the current look of the armor that we get at the minute. Also, the artifact system allows them to do a lot of really cool things. If you just look at the amount of Ashbringer variants they showed, like a lot of them, yeah, it's all technically the Ashbringer, but they feel very different. So certainly as far as armor and weapons and transmog potential, I'm actually very excited about this expansion. Next, we've got a question from Honeybear on Twitter, who said, do you expect there to be much more optional reps, factions, or quests? And I absolutely expect Legion to have much more of all of those things. Warlords of Draenor really kind of failed in that regard, and to be fair to them, Blizzard have acknowledged that. The class order halls provide a great way to deliver quest content, and hopefully Dalaran is going to be used as a launch pad into the world, because let's face it, Dalaran's fucking brilliant, and it's really nice to have it back again. There seem to be a few pretty decent factions floating around the place as well, so I think there's good potential for reputation content there. Again, based on what they've said during the interviews, it seems like they aim to have more fleshed out rep content this time around, so if we assume they stick to their word, yeah, I think we should expect to see more of that. Warlords of Draenor had great raid content, but where it really let the franchise and the name down is how little it did to deliver a fun experience outside of that raid content, at least in comparison to quite a few other expansions. They know that was a weakness. Repeating it would be sheer ignorance and stupidity, and I don't think Blizzard are ignorant or stupid. I think they ran into some problems with Warlords, and, you know, certainly if they're repeated, we're, you know, big problems. But I don't think they are necessarily going to specifically run out and repeat all the problems of Warlords. I think we are probably going to see a lot more optional reps, I think we're going to see more factions, and I think we're going to see more fleshed out endgame quest content. That's a personal hunch, and we'll have to wait until the alpha and beta to see if that is the case. Next, Horde or Die dropped a question on Twitter, saying, do you think Legion will have 3 tiers? I think Warlords was meant to have 3, but they cut them due to issues. And I'm unsure currently, and this is something I've sort of covered in previous videos, so I'm going to skim over it, but I think Warlords was planned to have 3 and the middle one got cut. They haven't talked about having a 3rd raid tier yet for Legion, and they still appear to be down with this yearly expansion goal. I think it's almost 50-50 whether we get a 3rd raid tier or not, but hopefully we do get one. Generally, a larger middle patch and an expansion means that, you know, it's got its launch period where everyone's got loads of content and they're happy, then there's a second big swell of content so everyone comes back and they're happy, and then there's a big thing at the end and everyone comes back and they're really happy, and you see nice retention throughout an expansion. So not only is it good value for people's subscription money, but it's healthy for the game, and it also allows Blizzard to flesh out the story a lot more at the end game, which again is an improvement over the Warlords offering. Next, we've got another question from Byron on Twitter, who said, what are your opinions on Demon Hunters completely obliterating rogues? I've heard that sentiment a lot, either from a rogue perspective or a warlock perspective, and I don't think it's a big concern at all. From what I've seen of the class, they appear to play quite differently. Rogues are stealthy assassins, or they're swashbucklers if they're in combat spec, whereas Demon Hunters are all about crazy acrobatics, lots of movement, and a big mix of attack types, and they're right up in your face. They also have a different resource mechanic to, say, the Monk, and I'm pretty sure they've got a different resource mechanic to the Rogues as well. So they might be a bit OP at the start of the expansion, as maybe the DKs were, but overall, I think they're going to slot into the game just like every other class does, and eventually they'll be decently balanced. As for the Warlock thing, with the Demonology Warlocks, well, I think Blizzard made the right call to change Demonology away from what it was. It's being changed so that instead of being a demon, you are a master of controlling demons, and that's a lot more fitting with what Warlocks actually do. in the game, warlocks don't actually exist, to my knowledge. So that makes a lot more sense to me, honestly, and I think both it, as in the Demonology Warlock, and the Demon Hunter, and the Rogue as well, are going to provide different gameplay to people. Still, we're going to have to see how this plays out during testing before we really know if it's unique, though the last class they added into the game was the Monk, and I think the Monks are really well designed, so I've definitely got high hopes for what they deliver with the Demon Hunter. Next up, Cameron left a question saying, do you think that Blizzard will develop the storyline of Legion with endgame content? Well, of course they do that with every expansion, but I get what you mean. In Warlords, much of the Garrison campaign felt a tad random. The quests sort of sucked balls, and I suppose maybe there were a few good lore moments in there, but still, most of the story was rubbish. You didn't unlock them via doing something, they weren't earned, the gating was annoying, the rewards really meh, and they were so easy they basically didn't constitute gameplay. In Legion, I hope they take some cues from Final Fantasy XIV and have max level story content that plays more like a single player RPG, in that it has mechanics that actually matter, and their storytelling, which hopefully would receive a lot more attention in terms of its depth. Even if it was going to be sort of lol dirt mode easy, at least something more akin to 5.1 as opposed to the Garrison campaign. Also, no gating things behind farming stones either, that does not make me happy. Fleshing out the story via reputations is another great opportunity that they can decide to do for Legion, because it's a really nice way of filling out the world and adding depth to the lore, and in general just providing more content at the endgame that gives really good story for people. So do I think Blizzard will do this stuff? Well, they certainly seem to have said that they will, and that it will be more of a focus, so hopefully they are going to be true to their word. Next up, we've got a question from James, who said, in all seriousness, what is your opinion of WoW sort of nabbing content from other MMOs like Star Wars or Guild Wars 2? And this is a general thing that Blizzard, or people have poked at Blizzard for quite a while. Honestly, I have no problem with them taking inspiration from what other games do. A good idea is a good idea, and often what matters is who gets the best version of a good idea to market first, not who gets a version of a good idea out first. If you're the first to have a really good and polished version of something, then you'll win. Just look at Apple as a great example. Tablets existed before the iPad, but the iPad's kind of what kicked them into the mainstream. Same goes for phones. Same maybe even goes for fingerprint scanners on your phone. Of course, Apple are most definitely not an infallible company, and sometimes people honestly get a bit too religious when it comes to their brands of choice, and I'm talking about you Android people as well as the iOS people. Everyone gets too crazy about that shit. It's just a phone. Anyway, my point here is that sometimes Blizzard are a bit like Apple in that regard. They're not the most innovative, but they take an idea that's maybe pre-existing, they polish it up really well, and then they deliver it really well. And as far as I'm concerned, as long as the game is good, then I'm happy with that way of doing things. If it makes people happy, if it's able to sell copies, then I suppose fair enough. Although that said, if you want to redefine a genre or really do something amazing, then you are going to have to come up with your own very unique idea and also implement that extremely well. Next up, Atrix asked, what can we expect from Legion in the long term with PvP and PvE? Well, obviously, you all know what they announced at Gamescom, so there's no point going over that. As far as PvE though goes, I think getting more dungeons is certainly a fair and good expectation for this expansion. It's something they've completely failed to do recently, and they did say dungeons are going to be more important, so it stands to reason that adding one would make, or one or more, hopefully more, would make a good bit of sense. Whether they do that or not, well, I don't know, it's pure speculation at this point. We don't really have a great deal to go off. As far as raid tier goes, of course, I would like to expect 3. I don't want to set myself up for disappointment, though I think 3 would be ideal, and I will be pretty sad and maybe a bit salty if they don't do that. As far as other stuff I would almost expect or really want to see, well, certainly evolving storylines and things like that go throughout the expansion, hopefully some evolving storylines with reps, and content that is based on your class that is added to the class order halls as time goes on. I think some of that stuff has got a lot of potential. I'd also like to see, a different patch cycle, maybe revamped archaeology, but just check out some of my recent videos for stuff like that. On the PvP front, though, they didn't really announce any new BGs or arenas. Sure, there's a new PvP system, but come on, the PvP guys haven't had a new battleground in, 2 years now, probably 3 years by the time, or maybe more, that Legion actually comes out. So there needs to be new battlegrounds or arenas, and I think that absolutely is something that is a fair expectation from people. Though, again, we're just going to have to wait and see. I don't have any insider knowledge in the slightest about this stuff, so hopefully we'll get lots of these really nice things. Next, Aldeus essentially asks, given the nature of Legion and what we know of the raids currently, what do I think a middle expansion raid tier would sort of be in terms of the look and the feel? Well, personally, I would love a Titan raid tier. It's an aesthetic that I really love, and the lore is just so bloody cool. A Naga tier is also very possible, and I would be happy with that, but the Titans are definitely more my thing. The Broken Isles are home to the Pillars of Creation, which are these massive Titan artifacts, and the Titans generally have a habit of leaving behind someone or something to guard their creations, which means maybe there could be a Titan raid tier or something like that. You know, they could sense the Burning Legion is attacking the Pillars of Creation, summons down Algalon version 2, and a big thing happens. I don't think maybe that a Vrykul raid tier is really that feasible in terms of them being a big enough threat, but if there was to be a Vrykul raid tier, I would be very happy because I absolutely love their look. Maybe there could be some stuff going on with their religion and the crazy stuff they're doing in the Broken Isles that could lead to a raid tier. Hard to know at this stage because we don't really know a great deal about that lore. Anyway, ideally a middle raid tier would add a new landmass with hopefully a new art style, rather than just a reuse of one of the sort of ones that are just, launched with the expansion. But certainly, yes, a Titan raid tier would be my solid bet for what I'd like from that. And finally for this Q&A, Andy Jones said, do you think the recent issues with WoW are down to Blizzard essentially cannibalizing customers with newer or more profitable titles? And I think in a way some of this stuff has been a bit of a worry of mine, and it's really less about other games because WoW is crazy profitable. I mean, they are selling boxed copies, a subscription fee, and have really pretty heavy monetization in terms of microtransactions, so it's making a lot of money. But they seem to be really comfortable with the idea of launching an expansion, making the big bucks, then letting it slide and hoping to win everyone back with the next launch. Certainly, in some of the interviews when people say, hey, guys, you lost a lot of subscribers during Warlords, what you don't hear from the devs is, Fighting Talk saying, you know what, we did lose subscribers, we're not happy about that, we're going to win them back by making a fucking amazing expansion, and we're going to win them back by delivering loads of great content in that expansion constantly. We don't hear that, we hear, oh, we don't really pay attention to that. It's transient, cyclical. Well, you know what, that's not really Fighting Talk, and it sometimes has me a bit worried that they're outwardly so chill and cool about that. And it seems like this is even more so a problem with this yearly expansion goal. Obviously, the expansions don't come out yearly, but it's as if they plan everything amongst them being yearly, but then they slip 6 months and everyone's left kind of, I don't know, with their arse hanging out with no content to keep them happy with. But every time you churn customers, you're going to have attrition. So that's why this model seems a little bit self-destructive on the long term to me. On top of that, we also see more store mounts than ever, and it's increasingly clear that they are kind of at the expense of the in-game earnable mounts, and yeah, okay, if you don't care about mounts then fine, but some people actually do, and for them, what the mounts drive you to do actually constitutes content, so it does actually matter. There's a lot more people that play the game than just the people who are like, I'm a Mythic Raider and I care not for visuals. So I suppose that stuff's a bit concerning. It's always possible that Warlords was a blip, and that they will learn, and that they will improve, and if they do, I will absolutely embrace that and be very happy. But anyway, that's pretty much it for this Q&A. They're most of the questions I actually got, so if you throw one down, pretty good chance you'll actually get it answered. A good mix of the positives and the negatives, I think, for this Q&A, so overall nice and balanced. But certainly, the overriding theme is, there's lots of stuff that could be great, the future could be extremely cool, but we're just going to have to wait and see, and hopefully once the alpha and beta comes out, we will have a lot of really good, exciting stuff to talk about. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.